there, it's Brandi at brandystamps.com, here today with another fun card making video. We're going to have an undersea adventure today using the Seaside Notions Stamp set. It's got all these cool seashells, the seahorse, and some great greetings that go along with it. And then we're going to bring in the Aqua Painter, which is one of my favorite watercoloring tools. To make this whole thing look underwater, we're going to use this. This Aqua Painter is actually full of water at the bottom. It has a valve here and then a brush at the end so that you can paint endlessly with different colors without having to wash it off and without getting too much water. So let's get started right away. For the watercoloring portion of this card, we're going to use our watercolor paper. This is just a really thick paper that's made of cotton that can absorb a lot of water. We're going to do some heat embossing. So I always like to start with Versamark for that. This is a sticky ink pad that will hold your embossing powder down. And plenty ink right about here. Now this ink pad is clear, and so you probably don't see anything at all right there. Let me see if I can help you. If you tilt this and look at it in the light, you can see the image of the water, the seahorse there. And so that's gonna be my guide for where to do the rest of this. Let's see, I'll start with this little shell. Here's a sand dollar over here on the edge. An ocean floor is always gonna have some sand on it. Okay, so that's all the stamping. It's time to put the powder on. I'm using the Stampin Up copper embossing powder. I always like to use a tray when I'm catching my extra embossing powder. Tap off the extra. It's like magic. There's our whole scene that we just stamped. Now let's pull in the embossing heat tool. This will just melt the powder. I like to hold the project and kind of tilt it toward the light so that I can see where it's melting. See that? I've got a copper shell. We'll just keep working across. Okay, the next step is we're going to add our sentiment. There. So I already kind of told you about the Aqua Painter. Let's pull that in. And now our color is going to come from a few of the re-inkers. So I've got Pool Party, Terracotta Tile, and Crumb Cake. And we're going to use some of that just classic Stampin' ink to do the coloring. What I've done is I've already prepared this is a piece of white cardstock inside of a clear envelope, no big deal at all there. And I'm going to basically make myself a little palette because once these inks are out, it is kind of hard to tell which color is which. They all look very dark outside the bottle. Let me tilt this on its side. The first thing I'm going to do is create the ocean water. And so this is going to be quite diluted. And I'm just gonna come in here and start painting some ocean water. The embossing really helps me have basically lines to help me stop my water from flowing where I don't want it to go. And it's great to have a little bit lighter and darker spots. I don't think the ocean is the exact same color in every spot. In fact, it never looks the same, does it? Do a watercolor wash across here. I'm going over it a couple of times. I want it to wash a little bit and blend away like it's underwater. Obviously, I don't want it to blur so much that I can't read it anymore. This paper does sometimes curl up too as it gets really wet, which is totally fine. It'll lay back flat again when it's all dry. Okay, let's flip this around so I can get to the back of the seahorse. So let's switch to a new color. I'm going to go now to the crumb cake, and this is going to be our sandy ocean floor, okay? Darken it a little where the sand is, where our dots are anyway. This is all sand, isn't it? Let's jump to the terracotta tile. This is the best part because we get to color the cute little seahorse. So many little ridges and bumps with the copper embossing. Usually my first step is just simply to get color all the way through this little guy. and just use those copper lines as your guide, especially on the outside edge, so that you don't bleed outside of that. Okay, this scene is looking like it's got a really good start. I'm going to let it set aside to dry, and I'll actually keep that in the frame just so you can see how it's drying. And let's go ahead and start to create the card base for this card. So I've got a piece of Bermuda Bay Cardstock, using my SNAIL adhesive for that. But I'll bump the copper one all the way to the right. See how I'm left with a little edge here. And then when I do terracotta tile, I'll just do that one all the way to the left. So those are a little bit offset. It's a really cool copper ribbon that is actually, it's made of tiny strands of metal. And when you open it up, you can see it's got a really intricate weave to it. There are a lot of different ways to use this. I've certainly just tied it around cards and made a bow before. But for this one, I'm going to spread it out. I'm giving it almost the impression of a net, but just kind of tug at it until you like how it looks and go, okay, that's looking pretty cool. So we'll set that aside. Now let's come back to our seahorse. I dipped back in my terracotta tile, and I'm going to come through here. With watercoloring, you always want to let it dry in between layers and then darken the areas afterward. If you get impatient and try to add layering to it before it's dry, all you'll get is it'll pool all the way across the image and make everything a medium color instead of having a dark area and a light area. And then I have another great product to show you. This one is the Wink of Stella glitter brush. It works in a similar way actually to the Aqua Painter, but what it paints out is not plain water. It is basically glitter water. So you can make everything a little bit sparkly, and this is how we're going to color the shells. There's just a ton of gorgeous glitter that comes out. All three of these shells are all prettified with glitter. And you can add, I'm just going to do a little bit down his spine too, just to add a little something to it. So hopefully you guys can see that on the video. It looks amazing in person with my little afternoon sun coming in on it. So now let's take, I'm going to just fold the ends across to the back. I'm using good old-fashioned Scotch tape. And these Stampin Dimensionals are almost gone, but you can see I just had edges left, and I just tear them. I just lift a little bit, and if you pull it, it tears off. These are hidden, of course, so you are not needing at all to have them be beautiful. And so you might as well use it right down to the last edge. And then those papers peel off just like they would on the perfect little octagon ones that are in the center. And we'll place this up in the middle. So I've got the Iridescent Sequin Assortment from Stampin Up. The colors match what we're doing here on the project really nicely. And when I'm using these loose sequins, I like to just kind of pick them up and just do a little. And once I've got these kind of sitting where I want them, all I do is come in with my fine tip glue pen. That's this little guy here. It has a really, really skinny tip to deliver just a little bit of glue, which is what I need for these sequins. And there's also this little needle that comes right out of the cap and threads down into the top of this. So when you close it and put it away, it really can't get clogged on you, which is nice because that's a tiny little spout. So to glue these down, I just go to lift one sequin up, put a dot of glue where it was, and lay it back down. It's a very wet, watery liquid glue, and so you're not going to want to touch that sequin again for a minute. Let it get settled there. And that is our finished card today. Isn't that pretty? Just a little underwater seahorse hanging out in the ocean, saying happy birthday to whoever you love. Remember, everything I showed in this video can be purchased at my website, brandistamps.com. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss a single video, and even click the bell so you'll get notified every time there's a new one. And I will see you next time. Happy stampin'!